there for you. It helps you in all you do. It helps you know you do. So tune in and now enjoy the fun. Join us now, enjoy the show.
Hello friends, my name is Anne-Marie and today is a great day to learn something new.
It certainly is, so let's do that together. My name is Gabe. Friends, welcome to
Studio Classroom. You're just in time for day 2 of our article called Don't Ignore the Risk. We are talking all about risk assessment, and in yesterday's lesson we learned 2 very important terms: voluntary risk and involuntary risk.
That's right. Some things we do in life on purpose, knowing that there may be a risk involved. That is volunteering or voluntary risk. Involuntary risk is the opposite. We may be in an environment, for example, like breathing in polluted air. We did nothing on purpose to contribute to the pollution, so it is involuntary risk. Anne-Marie, I am proud to say I have voluntarily removed a risk from my life.
What is that?
As you can see, I have no electronics in my hand because I have heard that sometimes electronics can pose a risk. So keep your iPad far away from me.
Will do. Let's get started with the first reading of the day.
Don't ignore the risk. Risk assessment, which combines science and data analysis, can be used to help communities better understand the dangers associated with various activities or environmental conditions. The goal is to reduce uncertainty and support smarter decision-making. Without proper risk assessment, people might either panic over minor dangers or underestimate serious threats.
Hello, I'm Jack. 今天要来看 without 加名词或动名词，逗号，主词加 might either A or B 的句型。这种句型是用来说明，如果没有某个条件，主词可能会有2种或多种的负面后果，常用于表达假设性或潜在的负面情境，语气也是比较正式的。如果不加 might， 也可以改为一般事实陈述句，但加入 might 可以凸显推测性。我们来看例句 ：Without sunlight, plants might either stop growing or die completely. 没有阳光，植物可能会停止生长或完全死亡。
All right, friends. Gabe, I thought you said you removed a risk from your life.
Yes, you're right. And then I remembered I have to teach, and it's more helpful when I have my iPad.
That makes sense. Let's read together here, friends. Ready? Risk assessment, which combines science and data analysis, can be used to help communities better understand the dangers associated with various activities or environmental conditions. This is a very long sentence, friends, so let's break it down together.
Okay, we see a couple of combined things that researchers used. One is science and, of course, data analysis. Data analysis is the process of studying numbers or facts to learn something.
Here's an example of how you could use that in a sentence. We did a data analysis to understand the survey results. Now we also see this term communities in this sentence. A community is a group of people who live in the same area, or it could be a group of people that share something in common.
For example, different communities came together to clean the park. So they can be used to help communities better understand the dangers associated with various activities or environmental conditions. When I think of dangers in this type of situation, I also think of the word threat. There could be threats involved. How does our lesson continue?
Well, we read the goal is to reduce uncertainty and support smarter decision making. We see this word uncertainty here, friends, and this means you don't know what will happen, or maybe you don't know what is true and what is not.
Yeah, we deal with uncertainty all the time. Nobody knows for sure what is going to happen tomorrow. We may have our plans, but nobody knows for sure. We can't be certain. There is a lot of uncertainty about the weather next week.
Okay, now we also see this term decision making. Now, making a decision, of course, is the process of choosing what to do.
That's right. Good decision making is important when working anywhere, really, but especially with a team. So we want to reduce uncertainty and support smarter decision making. We read, without proper risk assessment, people might either panic over minor dangers or underestimate serious threats.
All right, we need to talk about this word underestimate. To underestimate something means to think something is less than what it really is. If you underestimate the danger of something, it means that something is really, really dangerous, but you don't think it is. So that could cause a lot of problems.
That's right. The opposite is the word overestimate. For example, our sentence could read that some people might overestimate minor dangers. Something couldn't be, or maybe isn't that dangerous, but people think it's really dangerous. They're overestimating it. Well, we do have more to learn in our next reading.
Don't ignore the risk. In the context of environmental pollution, risk assessment carefully examines how pollutants could pose harm to humans, ecosystems, or both. Take soil and groundwater pollution as an example. If hazardous substances are trapped deep underground with no way of reaching drinking water supplies, the risk is low. But if those substances seep into wells or rivers, the danger becomes more serious.
"接下来看动词 seep， 意思是渗出、渗透。来看例句。The smell of coffee seeping into his bedroom from the kitchen gave him the encouragement he needed to roll out of bed. 咖啡的香味从厨房传到他的卧室，让他从床上爬了起来。惯用语 seep away 的意思是逐渐消失、逐渐流失。譬如 The respect and admiration she had enjoyed for so long at her workplace began to seep away after she made a series of careless mistakes. 在她犯下一连串粗心大意的错误后，她在职场上长久以来享有的尊重与钦佩开始消失了。Seep 的名词是 seepage， 意思是渗漏或渗出物。譬如The seepage of oil from the beached tanker was of grave concern to local environmentalists. 搁浅油轮的石油渗漏问题让当地环保人士深感忧心。
All right, thank you so much, Jack. Friends, we read on here, in the context of environmental pollution, risk assessment carefully examines how pollutants could pose harm to humans, ecosystems, or both. So we've talked a little bit about this word context before, friends, but let's define it again now.
That's right. Here we see it in this phrase, in the context of. We use this when talking about or thinking about something specific. For example, in the context of health, sleep is very important.
Now, we also saw this word pollution or pollutants yesterday. Let's review it together now. Something that makes air, water, or land dirty and unsafe. This is a pollutant, or in general, pollution.
That's right. Pollution from cars and factories really harms the planet. Sometimes we also talk about pollution that is that can't be detected or felt in your lungs, but maybe you think that something sounds really loud and annoying. Sometimes we talk about noise pollution, right? But we read on here, risk assessment carefully examines how pollutants could pose harm to humans, ecosystems, or both. Take soil and groundwater pollution as an example. Before we continue, let's take a look at groundwater.
Okay, we've talked about this before on the program, friends, but let's review it together. Groundwater is water that is found under the ground. Here's an example. Many people use groundwater for drinking and farming.
Okay, so we're taking a look at soil and groundwater as an example. If hazardous substances are trapped deep underground with no way of reaching drinking water supplies, the risk is low. Okay, so basically, if these hazardous materials or dangerous materials are very far away from us, the risk is low. That's what that word hazardous means, by the way, dangerous or harmful.
But if those substances seep into wells or rivers, the danger becomes more serious.
That's right. Well, there's another word we want to talk about here, and that is the word trapped. Okay, if something is trapped, that means it is stuck, it's unable to escape. So we were talking about how sometimes there is something that is trapped kind of very far away, and so it can't make its way into where communities are.
Oh, that's a good point. Or you could say that a bird was trapped in the cage and couldn't get out. The idea is that something is stuck and can't move. So the problem here is that there's no way to get these things that you need, and you're kind of in a situation where you're stuck.
Yeah, that's right. That's the idea of being trapped, right? So those kinds of things pose less of a risk. And in our last sentence, we see, of course, there are some things that pose more of a risk. The danger becomes more serious if those substances seep into wells or rivers. You've heard us use this word pose as well when it comes to risks or threats or dangers. Sometimes we talk about things posing a risk.
That's right. All right, friends, we have more to talk about in just a moment, right after today's Info Cloud.
Hello everyone, welcome to Info Cloud. Here on Info Cloud, we like to talk about leadership. There are many things a leader in a company or any group needs to do.
One of the biggest jobs leaders have is to solve problems when they appear. That takes courage.
Leaders need to face those problems and not bury their heads in the sand.
Right. The phrase, "don't bury your head in the sand," means that you shouldn't avoid a problem when you know it's there.
The phrase comes from the old belief that ostriches hide their heads in the sand when they're scared. It turns out that's not true, but the expression stuck.
It's often used when people pretend everything's fine, even when it's clearly not, like ignoring bills, health issues, or relationship problems.
Or skipping an exam review because you're afraid to see how unprepared you really are.
Yes, avoiding reality doesn't make it go away. It often makes it worse.
So remember, know what problems there are and face them head on. Don't pretend the problem isn't there.
今天要跟大家介绍一个和面对问题有关的用语 ，Don't bury your head in the sand。字面上是不要把头埋在沙子里，这也是在比喻一些人逃避现实，不敢面对问题。You can't just bury your head in the sand and ignore the bills。你不能只是逃避现实，不去处理账单。Don't bury your head in the sand 这个用语来自于鸵鸟的迷思。虽然他们不会真的把头埋进沙子里，但这种不想面对就假装不存在的心态，在生活中却很常见。面对问题虽然辛苦，但只有勇敢面对，才能真正解决。这就是今天的 Info Cloud， 我们下次云端见。
Don't ignore the risk. Risk assessment can be as simple as calculating probabilities or as complex as an integrated process involving various data and models. If a site has already been contaminated, risk assessment can help identify the best way to control or eliminate the contaminants. When there is no immediate danger and exposure to contaminants can be prevented, risk assessment can guide safe strategies for reutilizing the land, such as the construction of new structures. Taiwan's government has already incorporated the concept of risk assessment into laws and regulations to help prevent and control environmental hazards. By understanding and embracing the principles of risk assessment, we can make better choices, not just for ourselves, but for future generations as well.
"接下来看 embrace 这个动词，意思是拥抱、欣然接受。来看例句。Madison was so inspired by the book on minimalism, she decided to reduce her possessions and embrace the minimalist lifestyle. Madison 深受这本简约主义的书籍所启发，决定减少个人物品，拥抱简约生活方式。Embrace 也可以当名词，也是指拥抱。譬如When I tearfully told Grandma I hadn't gotten into my university of choice, she wrapped me in a warm embrace, assuring me that everything was going to be all right. 当我泪流满面地告诉奶奶我没有考上心仪的大学时，她给了我一个温暖的拥抱，安慰我一切都会没事的。如果把 embrace 前面的字首 em 去掉，就变成 brace。意思则是支撑器或是支架。譬如 The physiotherapist suggested that he wear a support brace on his knee until the muscles had been sufficiently strengthened. 物理治疗师建议他戴上护膝支架，直到膝盖肌肉足够强壮为止。
Okay, friends, it's time to see how our article is going to end. We read, risk assessment can be as simple as calculating probabilities or as complex as an integrated process involving various data and models. There are a lot of big words in this sentence, friends. Let's look specifically at that word calculating.
Well, if you are calculating something, that means you're finding an amount using numbers or very careful thinking. He's calculating how much money he needs for the trip, for example. And of course, this word always makes me think of a calculator, which is a special machine to help you do things with large numbers.
So we see here that risk assessment can be very simple. And one of these simple examples is to calculate probabilities. But risk assessment can also be more complex, and that's when you're using a lot of different data and integrating it together. We read on, if a site has already been contaminated, risk assessment can help identify the best way to control or eliminate the contaminants. We have some good words here to look at, friends. The first one is contaminated.
This is made dirty or unsafe by harmful substances. For example, water could be contaminated. The water was contaminated and so therefore not safe to drink. And there's a related word, of course, you see at the end of this sentence, and that is the word contaminant. This is a harmful substance that makes something dirty or unsafe.
So the contaminants are what make something contaminated. The scientists tested the river for contaminants, or you could say the river was contaminated.
Well, those words contaminated and contaminant always make me think of the words pollution or pollutants. I guess one small difference might be that contaminants are the specific things that are causing pollution or something to be contaminated. We read here, when there is no immediate danger and exposure to contaminants can be prevented, risk assessment can guide safe strategies for reutilizing the land, such as the construction of new structures. What does it mean to reutilize something?
It means that it was useful in the past, or it was being used for something, and then maybe it's not useful for that thing anymore, or maybe it has become unusable, but now we're reutilizing it. We're finding ways to use it again. Now we move on here and read, Taiwan's government has already incorporated the concept of risk assessment into laws and regulations to help prevent and control environmental hazards. All right, we have a few more big words here, friends. I know this lesson has a lot of big words and some long sentences. You are doing great. Let's take them one at a time. First, we see this word incorporated. This means to be included or added as part of something.
Yeah, for example, maybe your teacher likes to incorporate videos into the lessons to make it fun. So of course here we're talking about how the government has already incorporated the concept of risk assessment into laws and regulations. Regulations. What is a regulation? That is a rule made by an authority to control something or regulate something.
Here's an example of how you could use regulations in a sentence. There are strict regulations for food safety in restaurants. All right, let's keep reading here to the end, friends. By understanding and embracing the principles of risk assessment, we can make better choices, not just for ourselves, but for future generations as well.
You know, one of the key takeaways, I guess, I took away from this lesson is that we shouldn't be afraid about everything or scared about everything just because it could be considered a risk. It's possible to assess those things to see how risky it actually is.
Or if the risk is worth it, because some risks are worth taking and some maybe aren't. We're going to talk about that more in just a moment, but right now let's go to today's fun fact.
Hello, fact friends. I am Detective Ernest Finder, and I have a fun fact for you today. Did you know if someone often does activities that are dangerous or risky, they can be called a risk taker? It's true. Some careers involve lots of risk taking, like being an investor or an entrepreneur. And that is today's fun fact.
We've reached the end of our lesson, friends, which means it's time for a talk about it question. Here we go. Do you think risk assessment is only useful in situations like disaster prevention, or could it be useful in daily life as well? Explain.
Well, Anne-Marie, I think we do risk assessment all the time. We just don't call it risk assessment.
I totally agree with you.
It's like we don't always say, oh, I'm doing risk assessment right now, but I'm choosing to trust this person in this relationship and, you know, maybe share some things that are pretty sensitive or personal. That's risking in some way, and you're assessing the relationship to make sure it is worth it or not.
I think we do this with our life choices as well, friends. Maybe we choose to switch jobs, or we choose which school to go to or which school not to go to. All of those things are risks, and we just have to decide if they are worth it or not. Well, that's all the time we have for today. My name is Anne-Marie.
And my name is Gabe. We will see you next time right here on
Studio Classroom.
Cares at all times. A friend cares at all times. A friend endures at all times. A good friend lasts a lifetime. I am so proud to have you in my life. A good friend lasts a lifetime.